Hi, everyone. Welcome to our last live of 2024. We hope that everyone is getting ready for the holidays and hopefully some much needed rest and relaxation. I know I am. Our clinic actually closes for the last 2 weeks of the year to really prioritize that family time. So if you're looking to purchase any courses or need any support, or would like to order some supplements, make sure you try and prioritize that through the end of the week so that we can help support you in that. And today we have a very special guest who you guys are pretty familiar with by now if you've been watching our show for a while. And if you haven't been watching our show for a while, then you're in for a treat to meet Steven Wright of Healthy Gut. So before we bring him on, our quick disclaimers. This presentation is for informational and educational purposes. It is not meant to treat, diagnose, or prescribe or cure or prevent illness. Be sure to always discuss any health recommendations with your healthcare provider. This content is copyright of Mast Cell 360. It's for your personal, non-commercial use only. So please do not copy, but we do encourage you to share on your Facebook page if you would like to encourage your friends to watch. So whether you're watching this live or on the replay, be sure to share it if you know someone who would benefit. Also, just an affiliate reminder that we share products on our show that we personally have tested and we love, and we just want to remind you that we may get a small commission if you purchase through our links. You're never required to, and in often cases we have special deals that will save you money, but it never costs you anything more. And that small commission helps us to continue to run the newsletter, the website, and today's show. For those who do not know me, I am Jamie Freese Miller. I am a health coach here at Mast Cell 360, and I'm really looking forward to bringing our guest up on stage. So here he is. All right. Steven Wright, welcome to today's show. Let's see. Sorry, guys. This is my first time hosting, so stick with me. I know that you guys understand giving grace. And for those who normally watch on Facebook, we're having tech issues today. So hopefully Cam is sending messages to watch over on YouTube. And I realize that you won't know that because you're not on Facebook right now. But this replay will be up. So we apologize if you're watching the replay later if you had difficulties catching the beginning of this show. I do want to remind you that we have been doing giveaways, and today is no different. So if you participate in the live and by commenting, you will be entered for a chance to win one of our courses. All right, so what are we going to be talking about today? Steven is our gut guru. So we thought that we would do like a little bit of conversation around holiday stressors and how we can support the gut around the holidays, how we can avoid some of those holiday setbacks. And then today we are going to do a live Q&A. So questions that come in, we ask that you only put them in once, because if you add them multiple times, they jump around and we can't find them. So please only enter your questions one time, and hopefully we will get to as many as possible. All right. Steven, do you want to take the lead on this?
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks for having me, Jamie. Thanks for doing this. Happy holidays, everybody. If you're not familiar with my work, I've been writing, educating, and researching, trying to fix my own self as well as help others for 15 years in mostly focused on nutrition, diet, and functional medicine. And that has been a big focus on the gut. And so it's only been with actually the help of Beth in the last 4 years that I really start to understand histamine, my own histamine issues, and the deep interconnection with histamine, mast cell activation syndrome, and gut. And I think what's fascinating is, like I said, I have been doing this for 15 years. We did have a clinic for a little while. We don't have a clinic anymore. What I find super fascinating is that our our mind is really good at attaching to like one or two things. And it's really hard to hold a bigger perspective on multiple variables. And why that's important is because you're probably tuning in today thinking like histamine, mast cell, like that's the only thing on your mind. And that's important. But I'm just saying today I want to help you zoom out a little bit to realize that that is one dot or one data point on your map of healing. And the gut is deeply intertwined with mast cell activation, with histamine intolerance, and the spectrum of issues there. It may be the single most important factor, I would say, for you to get rid of your histamine issues. So if you're like, hey, I don't have gut issues, I have histamine issues, what I'm trying to tell you is that you have both. You have both issues. You cannot have one without the other, in fact, in my opinion. That's what the research says. That's what my clinical experience is. That what you see as well, Jamie, inside the clinic?
Yeah, I mean, definitely when we think about like mast cell activation syndrome, there's two components to it. Like there's people who have the dysregulated mast cells, and then there's the histamine intolerance piece of it. And when we think of like traditionally, a lot of people thought of mast cell activation syndrome as being like anaphylaxis and hives, right? But what we know now is as long as there's dysregulation in like two systems of the body, there's some level of like mast cell dysregulation. And then with the histamine load, we know that the mast cells are the cells that release the histamine. And so when we have that histamine bucket nearing like full, and then the body's able to break that histamine down, what we see is more histamine symptoms. And then so that link between histamine and the gut, histamine, you've said this before, histamine's not the bad guy. And basically histamine's a product of digestion. Like we cannot avoid histamine release when we're digesting our food. And so it's really important to keep that bucket lower in as many areas as we can by removing some of those other triggers, because when we eat, we're going to release histamine no matter what. And so there really is that connection between the gut and the histamine, but also just keeping in mind that the immune system is also 70 to 80% in our gut. And so when we wrap that all in too, like there's a lot of mast cells down there that may be producing a lot of symptoms.
Yeah. And so I guess what I want people to start with is that if you're having gut issues, you had a slide up, it was like bloating, basically anything. If you have a gut complaint, if you have a food sensitivity complaint, that is normal. You are like normal on the spectrum of histamine intolerance and normal on the spectrum of mast cell activation. So don't get too worked up about that. Just be like, okay, cool. It's another data point in my health journey. If you don't yet identify as having one of these gut issues, I would say one thing you could do over the holidays here is pay attention. Are you going to the bathroom more often or less often? How are your stool quality? Do you know what the Bristol stool chart is? It's this really cool chart that we all use on the health side around describing your poop, so we don't have to get super graphic. Start to look at that. Start to check in if certain foods make you a little bit more red in the face, or whatever it might be. Because I do think, as you said, they're highly intertwined. Because as you said, histamine is not the bad guy. It is released every single day, all day long, and in response to every single meal. It's just happening. The issue is when we cannot break it down fast enough, or we release too much of it. And so we're going to talk more about that. We're going to talk more about the gut. And like you said, it becomes this, my wife likes to call it peanut butter and jelly sandwich, right? We're like focused on the mast cells and histamine, but really it's totally surrounded by the immune system and by the gut. And so how do we begin to deal with this? Because certain interventions, while they might be better for mast cell, they might be worse for the gut, or certain interventions might be good for the immune system, but might be bad for mast cells. And so we need to start to take into account kind of the whole view as we sort of break these issues down. Yeah,
absolutely. Let's see. And I know that, our approach is very, very slow and slow. Like the Mast Cell 360 motto is, slow is fast and fast is slow, because when you put things in the right order, you can see that progress faster versus when you try to do things out of the wrong order, then it can cause like setbacks, right? And of course, with the holidays coming up, we see a lot of setbacks. Like even just Thanksgiving past, the number of clients that I saw who are like, oh, well, I ate this. And then like 3 days later, oh, I had all these symptoms, or I had a flare. And, people kind of forget that the gut like takes 3 days to occasionally show those symptoms. Like, in the mast cell world, we expect like immediate reactions where, when we think about how the gut reacts, it can be a little bit slower. And so people are surprised to hear that within our method, again, this is where we have open dialogue. Everyone is so individual, that our method with the Mast Cell 360 method is just that, a framework. And we don't completely disregard the gut. The rebuilding of the gut happens like in step 3. So people find that surprising that we rebuild gut health in step 3. But in stage 1, what we're doing is laying the foundation to have those bowel movements every single day so that we are going to remove the trash, as so to speak. Like the gut's really important. And we have this picture of a guy throwing trash behind him, leaving this trail, right? Like in our clinic, we use the analogy of, why we wait to rebuild the gut is because the gut is going to be constantly bombarded as we start that detox. And so it's really important to have some level of gut support on board in the beginning to get that trash out. So I don't know if you have anything to add to that, how we differ on approaches a little bit, but I know you speak a lot about, we got to get to the root issue of what's causing the dysbiosis or the leaky gut, and how can we do it in a way that's going to be supportive so we can get back foods, because we don't want to be on a limited diet forever. We don't want to have to eat low histamine. We want to get some of those high histamine foods back.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that we differ. I think we use different language. So I think you guys might still be using this idea that there's certain phases around, removal and reintegration and things like that, which is kind of the common functional medicine language. But the way in which you approach it, from my understanding, is very similar to how I think, which is that every single day, the gut is being impacted, both good or bad or neutral.
Yeah.
And every single day, no matter if you eat low histamine, if you're on 3 foods, or if you're on 50 foods and you're like, I don't care about this histamine thing, and you're just sucking it up through the holidays. Like, it doesn't matter if you're white knuckling or you're totally clamped down. You still need to make stomach acid every single day. You still need digestive enzymes every single day. You still have to have DIO every day, just to go throughout your day. And even if your body's really broken down right now, you're still making small amounts of those substances. And so I think you and I would both agree that my first step for people, like you said, is getting them to be pooping correctly on a daily basis by up-leveling their body's natural functions. So skipping the sauerkraut and skipping all the fermented stuff, skipping the bone broth, all this stuff's high histamine anyways. That stuff is kind of like frankly, it's just not for this audience. It's for like the walking well who are like, I don't know, their first journey, their first health book is about bone broth. Like, okay, that's cool. It's nothing against bone broth. It's just not that powerful. And it has these variables that might cause people, especially in the histamine world, serious upset. And so the fastest way I know of to stop losing foods and stop reacting to foods is actually to optimize the gut health organ. So optimize your stomach, optimize your small intestine, optimize your large intestine. And when you optimize those organs to be working the best they've ever worked, maybe the best they've worked in 10 years, I normally see everything starts to get better. You're pooping better. You have less GI complaints. You have less histamine complaints. Like whatever your complaints are, less hair loss, less skin issues, less brain fog. And that's partially because the organs are doing things that you don't even comprehend. Like it's taken me 15 years to even start to comprehend. But like, for instance, if we were talking about this, Jamie, if you have low stomach acid, so if your stomach's not functioning properly, you are likely dumping extra LPS So lipopolysaccharides, these are the walls of a gram-negative bacteria. They are normal. They're just like histamine. You cannot get rid of them. They're in your oral microbiome. They're in their gut microbiome. They're everywhere. But your body has defense mechanisms. And if those defenses go down, then the LPS is very, very bad for you. So sepsis, most people have heard about death and sepsis. Sepsis is when LPS basically bursts through the gut wall, goes systemic, and then you can't shut it down and you die. So LPS and leaky gut are at the root of that. We're talking about micro amounts of that, not like death every day, but like smaller amounts of that. Your stomach is the way in which you mainly detoxify LPS. If it gets through there, you have these other enzymes lower down. But if you're someone who has MCAS, has histamine issues, you need less inflammation. Like you literally need it so that you can stop reacting to everything. Your mast cells will stop being pissed off. One of the things they get pissed off about is LPS coming. Mm-hmm. And if your stomach acid's low, this is not Steven. This is from a research study. I can send you the study. Y'all can read it. You can come to whatever conclusion you want to come to. I didn't invent this stuff. I'm just reporting on it. Basically, what the study showed is that if your pH of your stomach is above a 4, you could have up to 2,000 times the amount of inflammatory LPS that are leaking into your gut every day. And then your mast cells get pissed about that. And then they release histamine. And then you feel all these things. And so just by, for instance, taking a week or two to optimize your stomach acid, you can significantly stop the slide of food loss, and like you can start to improve the mast cells. I'm not saying it's like a panacea or some sort of magic Santa Claus bag, but it will make a measurable difference usually for most people. And then you can move to the next organ and the next organ.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm looking at some questions to see if we want to bring one in here. Let's talk, before we get to the questions, let's talk about some of these like stressors specifically for the holiday. When you mentioned the homework that you kind of gave everyone of what pay attention to what foods bring a little bit more color to your face. Like, it's so funny because I have autoimmunity on both sides of my family. Like, I have celiac disease and Hashimoto's, right? But then about 2 years ago, looking at all this, I realized that a mold exposure really set me over the edge, right? Like, genetically, I was like, all right, I have some of these factors. But when you add in those environmental factors, it's like, what really can tip you over. And so I personally had a mold exposure. It is a big piece of mine, but it came down to like talking to my provider about the symptoms that I was really noticing. And I was like, my runny nose, I couldn't eat without my nose running, which I was like, what is going on? Like, so I told him I had like high thyroid antibodies that, given everything I had tried, like managing my stress, not enough now that I know like all the different parts, like the limbic and the vagal, but like I was managing my stress as best as possible. I had tried the autoimmune protocol diet and removed a bunch of foods. But I was still having high thyroid antibodies. I was still having histamine issues. So I went to him and he was like, that sounds like MCAS. And that's how I found Mast Cell 360, to give, new listeners a little bit of my background. But the one thing that I noticed was histamine issues. And I've always been interested in genetics, to dive a little bit more deeper into like what genetic makeup. Do I have some of those SNPs that make me a little bit more susceptible to histamines? Because my dad definitely has like histamine issues and he eats such a high histamine diet. And then my mom, since we're talking about holidays, one glass of wine, bright red, like always that way. And we're not a big drinking family. We never were, but like, so it was very noticeable. Like the one time she allowed herself to have a glass of wine with dinner, like the pink rosy cheeks immediately would happen. And now I see it in my son. Like he would go outside and pink cheeks, like with the weather temperature change, pink cheeks immediately. And now I know it's like, that's the mast cell and histamine reactions. But it's just funny that, we can see that when we actually take the time to be aware of like stressors, whether it's food or environmental, in other ways. So,
well, yeah, to what you're saying, I mean, it might be that your family has a family history of low DAO. Like you might have the genetic SNP such that you don't make enough diamine oxidase, which is the enzyme in your gut, the brush border enzyme that breaks down histamine. And so that might be a familial lineage thing.
Right.
I know right now, so it's holidays right now for us, and I'm taking like 60 iota a day right now. Just prophylactic, like just ahead of time, just to stay ahead of stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know when I'm going to get cross-contaminated. I don't know when I'm going to have alcohol or not have alcohol. I just don't know what's happening, right? Because I'm trying to meet up with family. We're trying to do special things. It's an uncontrollable time and uncontrollable environment. So the thing I can control is loading up on higher dosages of things I know help me.
Yeah, definitely. I say that all the time. It's like there's things in your control, there's things outside of your control. So you always have to focus on like what in the moment do you have control over? And it's like if you go to someone's house and they have the fragranted candle, like can you be brave enough to say, hey, do you mind if we blow that out? Or like, hey, like taking those breaks outside to get the fresh air, right? So definitely let's talk about these. Like, what are these holiday gut health stressors? Stress being one. And, stress is, people think mental stress, right? But I like to remind people that stress can also be very physical. So it's like, did you eat something that doesn't agree with your body that's going to cause a real physiological reaction, which is a form of stress on your body? So that would be one. How do we deal with these? We talk a lot about nervous system calming here at Mast Cell 360. I'm going to direct you guys to go back into our replays. About a month ago, I did some like nervous system calming exercises. So I highly recommend you go check it out. We also have a whole course on it. So really be aware of similarly to Steven's like proactive DAO intake, you could be proactive about implementing extra nervous system supports. So making sure that you are taking care of your mental health. But then we'll also talk about, what are some other things supplement wise can you do to manage that stress? So, Steven, we have a blog post. Sorry, Cam, we did not prepare for this, but I do know that we have a blog post on adaptogens. So I'll let her put that into the comments for you guys. But I'd love for Steven to be able to, talk a little bit about some of the other ways that we can manage those stressors that come with the holidays.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think number one is just agreeing that today, this time, this phase is like probably the most challenging phase of the year. It is the phase in which our emotions are tugged in so many different directions. Our time is tugged, our money is tugged, like everything is under strain, or our patterns, like our habitual going to the gym or going to work or whatever, they all change due to even vacations. Like sometimes even vacations are stressful. Yeah. And so I think if you can acknowledge that the holidays are stressful, then the next thing I would hope that you do is give yourself a big old hug and just say you're not going to be perfect. Like just give it up. There is no such thing as perfection during the holidays. And if you can stop the cycle that I went on for a long time, I went on it for probably 10 years, where I would beat myself up because I was like, I'm not going to have the sugar cookie. I'm not going to have the gluten cookie. And then I freaking, hours and hours of family events. And then I don't even know, like I just blacked out, not from alcohol, just like in my mind, I wasn't paying attention. And I grabbed a cookie and it was in my mouth before I knew what was happening. I was like eating gluten and sugar. And the amount of times that has happened to me where, frankly, what I needed was a nap. I needed some rest. I needed my own time, some space. But when you're in friends and family functions, you can't plan for that kind of stuff. Yeah. And so if you can give yourself some grace and some just like, look, it's going to be okay. Even if you have a setback, as annoying and frustrating as that might be, as painful as that might be, I'm here to tell you, after having many setbacks, after spending, many a function on the toilet, you can heal, you can get through it. And so I think that's a huge thing, is like, if you can stop the self-abuse when things go sideways, that can be a massive game changer just for your emotional experience during the holidays. You're going to lower your stress levels. You're going to lower the burden on your body. And it's going to make it so much easier for you to see through the fog of like, oh, you're right. I should have doubled my enzymes during the holidays. and I didn't listen to that guy again. You're right. I should have listened to Jamie. I should have done my tapping exercises, and I maybe should have had some adaptogens in my purse in case things got crazy, and I didn't. And then things went sideways. And so I think having some grace during the holidays, and then having backup plans. Like, think this through. Like, I don't care if it's quercetin or PEA or whatever it is you use for your mast cell stabilizer. Maybe use the MC stabilizer supplement. Having an extra bottle of that with you at all times. Having an extra bottle of Holozyme with you, just so that if you're like, I don't trust what's happening, I feel more stressed, I'm gonna take 4 Holozymes, just because who knows, my nervous system might not be working so well today.
Yeah.
These little actions can really save. They can really save a day, and sometimes saving a day can save a holiday, like time period.
Yeah. No, those are some great suggestions. I always have little containers of like my supplements to take at this time and this time and this time, because when you have MCAS, you're probably taking multiple supplements multiple times a day if you're at that point where you're able to tolerate them. And for those of you on today's call who may not be even tolerating supplements yet, that is really when you want to double down on, that nervous system support. So Beth and Court asked, is it true that stress is the #1 mast cell, activator trigger? We have found that supporting the nervous system can be about 50% of healing. And so to have those nervous system supports on board is going to be really beneficial, especially for calming down those mast cells. But then if we go back to thinking about how stress is more than just mental stress and emotional stress, it's the stressors on your body. So for me, going back to having all of these symptoms, even though I thought I was doing everything right, for me, I hadn't addressed the mold yet. And so there was a continuous stressor on my immune system that as I kept detoxing mold, like my gut was still going to be at a level of, I don't know. It was my body's constantly, detoxing mold right now. So I'm constantly dragging the trash through the living room with the holes in the bag and things are leaking out, right? But all that to say, I am taking HCl and DAO and digestive enzymes in order to support my gut and have that daily bowel movement as I'm detoxing. So if we rethink of what is stress, yes, there are a lot of stress is probably like the #1 trigger. It's just, what is that stressor for you as an individual?
Yeah, I think people, when they're earlier in their journeys, in their personal health journeys, they really want to figure out the #1 thing. And the truth is that the body is so complex. The environment that we live in is so complex. As soon as you find that #1 thing and you think you've handled it, then there's a new #1 thing.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like whack-a-mole, the game as a kid, and it's so frustrating. And so if you can, like you said, if you can take that holistic approach and be like, wow, okay, stress comes in physical forms, emotional forms, global forms. Like the global world is more stressful today than it was 10 years ago. I mean, of course, it depends on where you live, but most people in Western states around the globe, I think, would agree that the world's more unstable now than it was 10 years or 20 years ago. And so that's a factor. I'm not saying you have any control over that, but I'm just saying that these are examples of stress on your body, and you can look into how do you do stress, like you said. Maybe you need more DAO. Maybe you need adaptogens like B-Serene or B-Serene IR. I mean, that's what I did through the pandemic. So I was having extraordinary amounts of stress and anxiety. I couldn't sleep, and I just couldn't get my mind to turn off. Like, it just spinning out about a million things. And I would have to take 4 to 8 squirts of B-Serene IR a night just to calm down, just to chill out. And it's one of the reasons why we acquired that company, to keep it alive, because I love the product. It's I don't need it every night, but when I need it, man, is it there for me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, my background's in anthropology, so like talking about how much more stress we as a society experience today versus how, we biologically evolved. Like I always talk about like the proverbial tiger, like your body doesn't know the difference between being chased by an actual tiger or like sitting in traffic or like a work deadline, right? Like so when we like this is where the power of awareness can really come in and being mindful. Like we talk about the autonomic nervous system a lot and how it like automatically we breathe, automatically we digest our food. But when we bring awareness to things that happen unconsciously, we can be more mindful about them and, approach them in a different way that's going to support us more for success, to remove some of those triggers, like adding, alternate nostril breathing right before you eat a meal can be, a way to put yourself in a parasympathetic. And like people who are religious, like saying grace, like if you think about that mindful pause before eating, I'll share this. This is one practice that my family does every single night at dinner. We say at least one thing that we're grateful for. And so it's bringing those happy feelings into like around that mealtime to switch you out of fight or flight into that sympathetic rest and digest, which is where we're going to get the restoration we need when we hopefully get that deep sleep, and where we can actually absorb our nutrients and calm down those mast cells when we're eating. So stress is a big one. It's what we have found, to be key and a crucial part of healing from mast cell activation syndrome. But like Steven said, there are definitely things that we can control and be more proactive about around the holidays. And so he was mentioning the Be Serene IR, and then there's capsules. So those are going to be available on both Healthy Guts website as well as in our store. And we could talk a little bit more about those. But then, yeah, like we've been talking about this whole time, is how do we regularly support the gut through the holiday stress? So Healthy Gut has an amazing line of products. And let's see, sorry guys, bear with me with this whole first time. Here we go. All right. You can go to healthygut.com and use Mast Cell 15 for $15 off your first purchase. And then also, this is great if you've never tried Steven's products before, because they have an amazing customer support team and they offer your money back. So I'd love, Steven, for you to talk a little bit about your products now. If anyone has questions, pop them in. We will, try to answer as much as we can.
Yeah, let's pop up a few of these, and I'll feel like Beth in court asked, what does HCL stand for? And I think that's a great question.
Yeah, let me find it.
So here at Healthy Gut, it's a family-run company. We are definitely different than other supplement companies. Not only do we have our give a poop or give a shit guarantee, where we're gonna help you guys with your dosing, and if it doesn't work, we'll give you your money back. But we also have all U.S.-based health coaches that are extraordinarily trained. Most of them have had histamine issues or MCAS issues. And we want people to get on the phone with us. We want to help you, because the world of supplements, the world of healing, like once you leave the modern medical system, the industrial medical system, once you walk away from it for the most part and you try to start to figure this out on your own, it's really confusing. It's very stressful and it's hard. And we know that because we've all been in it for 10, 20 years. And part of our company's mission is to help people through that journey better. And so not only do we, I think, build the best products in the world for each of the categories we enter, but we also try to give the best support in the world. And that's our mission. That's what we're up to. The HCl is hydrochloric acid. So it's part of our stomach. Our stomach is like an underappreciated organ. And when we eat food, there's a lot of signals that are happening. And histamine is actually one of them. Histamine actually helps your stomach make acid. And so your stomach has these little pumps, and it pumps out acid, hydrochloric acid. And so the supplement form for folks who do not have enough acid, which I would say is the majority, I would say 80% of everybody with MCAS has low stomach acid. Now, I don't know that that's true. I can't prove it to you with a study yet because we don't have a study, but I can tell you that some of my mentors who actually did in-practice testing, Dr. Jonathan Wright, Dr. Steven Lewis, when they tested people with IBS or heartburn, they found about 80% of those individuals had low stomach acid. So I don't see why that number would change when it comes to histamine and MCAS. So I would say at least 80% of folks who have these issues have low stomach acid, meaning they do not make enough acid in response to food. And they could be helped tremendously if they took basically powdered acid in a capsule, which is the supplement betaine HCl or betaine hydrochloride. Now, normally you're going to supplement with something that also includes pepsin. Pepsin is the main protein enzyme in the stomach that gets released, and so most formulations on the market are betaine HCl with pepsin. Now, if you read the biology books and the anatomy books, you also find that your stomach also releases something called intrinsic factor. Intrinsic factor is the sort of binder or bouncer for B12. B12 as well as, like, why would stomach acid matter? Well, I told you that it increases your inflammation if you don't have enough of it, but it also makes you lose nutrients because that's where iron is released, calcium, magnesium, the B vitamins. It's where your protein is broken down. So if you're eating protein, but you're still losing weight, you can't gain muscle, your stomach acid might not be strong enough to actually open up the protein to be able to absorb it. And so the acid does all that work. And so when it liberates the food into nutrients, intrinsic factor grabs the B12 because B12 is kind of unstable, and then it shepherds it down into the small intestine and then through the small intestine into the body. And so if you're someone who has pernicious anemia, that's low B12, a form of anemia. If you're somebody who has fatigue with MCAS and you've already tried methylated hydrocobalamin, you've tried methylcobalamin, you've tried, there's so many cobalamins, which are B12 derivatives, and you just can't seem to like feel energized. The B12s don't really do much. It might be due to intrinsic factor. And so I just thought that if you have a stomach support product, you should have intrinsic factor in there. And so I believe we're still one of the only companies in the world to include intrinsic factor in our product. And then we also include ginger, organic ginger, and DGL. And the reason why is that organic ginger happens to be a mast cell stabilizer, but it's also a motility activator. Motility are like the waves that push the food through your body. And most people who have low stomach acid have low motility. And it's just partially because acid sets one of the motility triggers. And so ginger has been studied in humans to actually improve those motility waves. And so HCL Guard is our stomach support formula. You can get, there's like 1,000 of them out there. What people use ours for is because you end up taking less pills and because it has the extra herbs in there that most people find are actually better for histamine-related issues at MCAS, which is why, Beth adopted our product a long time ago, 4 years ago when it came to the market in the first place. So, so it's really great, except for if you're like Teresa and it causes intense gastric burning and pain. So if you take HCl and it causes intense burning and pain, this is a really important clue. Like one of my sayings is like your body's always leaving clues for you.
Oh yeah.
So, whether it's a food or a supplement. So in this case, if you take an HCl product, whether it's ours or anybody else's, and you have intense pain, that is a really great sign. Now, what it probably means is you have a mucosal membrane issue, and it might be so bad that you have ulcers. At a minimum, you probably have low mucosal thickness, like the mucous membrane is thinned out, and you may have gastritis, which is just inflammation of the lining of the stomach or maybe of the small intestine. And so you're not going to take, if it causes a lot of pain, whatever it is, don't do it anymore. It's I don't care who it is, don't do it anymore. And so what you'll probably need to do is do a mucosal membrane healing protocol and focus on that for a little while, because that is also extraordinarily important for healing MCAS. What is one of the biggest buffers between the mast cells in the outside world? It's your mucus. And if your mucus is thin in one spot, it's probably thin in a lot of other spots. And so kind of reorienting your world and thinking about, okay, like what herbs help with mucus. Things like DGL do. Your hormones really matter for mucus. So if you're perimenopause, like if you're over 30, check your estrogen levels. If you're in your 50s, probably get on some bioidentical hormone replacement, progesterone and estrogen. People have vilified estrogen, but estrogen is one of the most important hormones for your mucosal thickness. There's other products like our Tributyrin X that will help with mucus secretion and mucus production. So you can kind of reorient, based on things like, some people would say like, oh, this sucks. Like I can't use that product. But actually, I find it like that's actually a really cool test to know. Now you have a different way to orient your healing for the next 3 months or whatever.
Right. There may still be an underlying gut issue, but it might not be low stomach acid.
Yeah.
So finding out like what's actually going on for you and keeping in mind, like we are all individual, like we all have different triggers. And so, what we're talking about on this show, right, is not meant to cure you. And, this is not medical advice. We're telling you, we're having an open dialogue and conversation. It may spark a little idea for you to then go explore further with your licensed medical practitioner. And we did talk a little bit last week about the feedback loop of estrogen and histamine and how we can get caught in that loop. But yeah, there is that deep connection between the hormones, and like people think the hormones are usually the straw that breaks the camel back, when similarly to MCAS, like a hormonal imbalance is all downstream of like what's really going on at a deeper level. So yeah, listening to your body. I always say, our body's always talking to us. Symptoms are just that form of language. And so what is the symptom trying to tell you? All right, let's see.
Yeah, I love that.
All right. All right, so we talked about, gut support. Is there anything else you'd like to add to that before we move on?
Well, I think so Teresa also asked about what about way too high a motility. So I think a lot of people on this show I see are mentioning mostly constipation dominant bodies. So I typically classify individuals as like diarrhea dominant or constipation dominant. And basically what I just mean is that like under stress, your body will do what? And
one or the other.
Yeah, for some people it's like hold on, clamp down. And then for other people, it's like reject, yeah. Get it out. And so that's okay. Just knowing whatever your likely outcome is important. Tributyrin X is a butyric acid supplement. It's the most advanced in the world. We have a patent-pending capsule that gets it down into the microbiome area. We have the purest source in the world. We are the only company with it. We have a special scientist out of Spain who's like his whole life is all about this stuff. And if you have loose stools or you're diarrhea dominant, Tributyrin X is like one of the best things you could ever try. Mm-hmm. That being said, it doesn't make it bad or wrong for you if you're on the constipated side. In fact, it might be also the number one thing you need to try after probably checking for low stomach acid. And the reason why is that there is a compound in the gut that is the most important compound in my opinion, is the compound that you name something and I can Google it and I can show you a study linking butyrate to whatever the problem is. It's that important. In fact, it might be, everyone's focused on the microbiome, but it's not the microbiome, right? It's what the microbiome does that is the important thing for health. And the thing that the microbiome does, it does a lot of things, but the main thing it does that we are aware of at this time is butyrate production. We cannot make it without the microbiome. We don't make it internally. It's our gut bugs that make it in response to fermentable fibers that we eat. And so this butyrate production is what keeps the oxygen low in our gut, which is what we want. That makes it inhospitable for bad bugs and SIBO and candida and parasites and everything. They want high oxygen. We want low oxygen in our gut. We want high oxygen in our brain, high oxygen in our lungs, high oxygen everywhere. In the gut, we want really low oxygen. And butyrate is also very important for leaky gut. It helps correct that, helps correct those mucus pathways that get thinned out, and it also is a mast cell stabilizer. And so for people with MCAS, now if you can't tolerate any supplements, don't start with this supplement. But if you can tolerate a few supplements, then I would say Tributyrin X could probably be like one of the biggest game changers you could add to your healing protocol, because you're going to be protecting your gut on a daily basis while you detox the mold, while you detox the heavy metals, while you detox whatever you're working with your provider to get after. Butyrate is the molecule that sort of keeps the gut healthy while things are unoptimal. So like while you're eating a low histamine diet, while you're eating a low FODMAP diet, while you're eating a super restricted diet, you're going to be cutting out the foods you need to make butyrate. So how would you get the butyrate to stay healthy? You would have to supplement with it. And so that's where Tributyrin X comes in.
Yeah. And like Steven mentioned, Mast Cell 360 kind of adopted the use of Tributyrin X, HCl Guard, and his digestive enzymes, Hologuard or Holozyme, into our practice because they are usually well tolerated. Again, it's all individual. But if you have been using these products and are, already a member or someone who shops in our store, so first-time users, we always recommend going and purchasing from Healthy Gut directly because of their amazing return policy and their health coaching guidance. But if you are purchasing from our store, we are currently running a sale. So just wanted to provide that for you guys. Code GUIDE10 at mastcell360.com/store-healthygut will get you 10% off for, I think, the rest of the month. So just to let you guys know that that's available to you as well. So bringing this all back to, prepping for the holidays, other things to keep in mind as far as what are some of the stressors. We know that travel is a big one. And we know that, like Steven mentioned in the beginning, you might accidentally get that cross-contaminated food. You may just choose to eat the cookie because you really want the cookie. That is me. Like, it's always gluten-free because, it has to be for me. But sometimes I know that gluten-free flour also has white rice and oats. And I know that I don't tolerate rice and oats that much right now, but I still eat that cookie because, I give myself the grace about it. And I take the extra enzymes before it. So keeping in mind that those are stressors and there are tools to help you manage that. And one of those tools is, if you haven't gotten it yet, we do have our Mast Cell 360 or our Mast Cell Holiday Survival Guide. So in there, you can grab it here at this link, mastcell360.com/survival. We have mast cell and histamine intolerance travel tips in there, how to customize your own flare plan. And if you are hosting, we have some meal ideas in there so you can produce some food that is safe for you to eat. Like, one of my best tips for the holidays and parties and things is either eat before you go or bring at least one thing to contribute that is safe for you to eat. So you can at least focus on that. All right, I think we have time for, let's see, live Q&A. Let's go back to questions, and I want to wrap this up so that we can go by 2. We know everyone's time is valuable, but we also want to answer some lingering questions you may have. So let's see. Are there any that you want to answer, Steven, that jumped out at you?
I think, we can touch on the holiday stuff for a minute, and then I think Beth and Cor was asking a little bit about holozymes. Okay. So as she just said, making up your mind before you go throughout your day, literally start as soon as you wake up, before the kids get up, before your husband, before you check your phone, and be like, okay, what's on the docket today? Okay, I'm shopping for 3 hours, and then I gotta pick up the kids, and then I'm wrapping gifts, and then I'm going to a party. Thinking that through, thinking about what are your nutritional needs going to be? Where are you likely to cheat? Where are you likely to fall down because you got too overwhelmed by emotion or blood sugar or whatever it is? These are really, really helpful, because if you don't plan, then you definitely plan to fail. And so I'm with Jamie. I'm not trying to live a life of perfection. It's impossible for me. And I think it's impossible for everybody. And so what I've done is I plan by having extra baggies of the supplements I know help me. And I have them with me all over. So I never leave the house without charcoal in my carry bags. Like I have charcoal with me everywhere I go. I have enzymes with me everywhere I go. I have Histamine, which is the DIO supplement everywhere I go. I have Tribunal X with me everywhere I go. And I know that if I have some alcohol, I'm going to take an extra Tribunal X before bed because Tribunal X helps protect against alcohol damage. I know that I'm going to take an extra couple DIO, Histoharmony DIOs, if I have any alcohol. I know that if I go to a restaurant, I'm going to take enzymes before the meal and after the meal because it's just going to help me. So I have these tools. And, for some people that needs to be like quercetin or some sort of mast cell stabilizer. For some individuals, it's the adaptogens, right? It's the B-serine. They're like, oh, like my mom, she loves the B-serine daily pills. And during the holidays, she does 2 in the morning, 2 at lunch, and 2 at dinner. And it's like enough so that she just doesn't
Right.
lose
Like,
her mind.
are you going to go see that one family member that drives you up a wall?
Right.
We all have at least one.
Yep. And so just think about the tools and prepare with these tools ahead of time. And I think they can be super helpful through the holidays. Bethancourt, I would try to get off Miralax as soon as you can. Polyethylene glycol is known to cause DNA damage. It's known to mess up your mucosal membranes. You can just Google it. I don't need to show you the studies. The studies are there. I'm glad that you're pooping, and that's great. Like, seriously, pooping is super important. But the faster you can use some magnesium, some vitamin C, maybe some HCl guard to get off Miralax, the healthier you're going to be in the long run. Because Miralax should be only used for short-term sort of emergency-like situations, in my opinion, based on the research.
Yeah. And Bethancourt is also asking about the holoimmune and holozyme from your website.
Yeah, so holozyme is our digestive enzyme. We're the only people in the world with a patented activation system. So basically, our enzymes come with cofactors or energy to make them work better. The rest of the digestive enzymes out there, some of them are good, some of them are not so good. But what I would say is that ours reliably work and have been tested in the histamine sort of sensitive, group of people. They're like the product that saved me from bloating and all kinds of food sensitivities that I was struggling with when my stress was through the roof. If you're not on a digestive enzyme and you're going through this journey, I don't care if it's healthy gut digestive enzyme, like you should be on a digestive enzyme. Like as far as where does it fit in your supplement lineup, it's a core supplement, in my opinion. If you want the nutrition from the food that I assume you're spending a lot of money on, like I don't care if you're locally buying it, you're going to Whole Foods, you're raising it in the backyard, it's costing you a lot of money to get access to really good food these days, and you want to get all the nutrition from that food. Enzymes are the things that sort of like cut up your food and let the nutrients go so that you can actually absorb them. So if you have some sort of small enzyme imbalance or lack of enzymes, whether it's in your pancreas or there's a lot of different places, you're going to be losing that nutrition, and guess who gets to eat it? Bugs, and probably bad bugs, not the bugs you want. And so if you're trying to get rid of SIBO, Candida, SIFO, these types of things, you're trying to keep that stuff under control. If you're trying to get rid of dysbiosis in your microbiome, enzymes are your friend, whether they're our brand or anybody else's brand. So I really encourage that. And then holoimmune is more of an advanced supplement for the MCAS crowd. I would say you have to definitely be tolerating holozymes and Tribunal X before you should start holoimmune. But holoimmune is a rehab for your immune system. So there's a myth that is just not true, which is that if you were just to remove all the bad things in your life that were causing your MCAS, that your immune system would suddenly be working fine. Like if you got rid of the mold and you got rid of the parasite and you got out of the stress, your immune system would work like perfect. That's not true. It's adapted over the last however many years, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, to a pattern of being, a pattern of signaling with certain cytokines, certain Th1, Th2. And just because you remove those triggers doesn't mean it snaps back perfectly. It's like breaking your bone or straining your ankle. It will heal and you'll be able to do some functionality, but if you want full functionality, you have to go through a rehab program. And holoimmune is basically that. It's a rehab program to help your immune system start to fire correctly again. It's dead probiotics, and they cause this balancing act amongst Th1 and Th2 inside the gut, and it spreads throughout the body. It's like little signals. The body takes up these dead probiotics, and they they essentially spread signals of balance throughout the rest of your body. And so it is the supplement for somebody with seasonal allergies, somebody with food sensitivities. Once they're starting to add back foods, once they're starting to try to get off of antihistamines and things like this, this is your product, and it's wonderfully amazing. But if you start it before then, it can kind of it can be too much. It can be too stimulatory for some individuals.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Well, that kind of brings us to the end of our last live of 2024. And let's see, our winner is, let me see, Cam got it up for me, Beth and Court. So thank you. You were a very active participant today. Hopefully you got some ideas and guidance, and we will make sure that you get a course of your choice, either the top 8 supplements, our nervous system reboot, or our mold basic. All you have to do is make sure to email support@mastcell360.com, and we will make sure that you get set up with that. So thank you so much for joining us today, Steven, and I hope everyone listening has like the most joyful and restful holiday season. So
yeah, happy holidays, everybody.
Yeah,
be kind to yourself.
See you next year.